All together now. Come on. 3, 2. Hope you got some of that in. Full moon Wednesday. Hi, Thomas Miller on the Fun Astrology July 13th podcast. Welcome aboard. 2:38 p.m. according to at least Asheville, North Carolina time this afternoon. It will be in the sign of Capricorn, and on my chart I have a 9th house sun and a 3rd house moon. Also, that moon is 6 degrees away, just nearly to the tick, 6 degrees away from retrograde Pluto, which, of course, as we talked about yesterday, spent most of yesterday spot on exactly the same place it was on July 4th, 1776, the infamous Pluto return. You know, I guess it's safe to say that we have a supermoon, so the moon is the closest it will be to the Earth. The moon and Mercury are both out of bounds. Mercury just barely, the moon widely, but barely and widely don't matter in this game. They are both out of bounds. I got to tell you, I've been seeing it. It really started for me on Saturday, and I'm not going to go into the details of it because it involves some things around the podcast, but I'm just going to say it's been difficult, and I've had to do some things that I don't like doing, but figure that boundaries, you know, whenever planets are out of bounds, and the moon is out of bounds like by a mile, I always think of that analogy of ski ropes. There were a couple of places in Aspen where the ski patrol had boundaries, but they had gates, and you could go into the advanced terrain, if you will, through the gates. Well, I'd always ski up to those. Sometimes I would go, sometimes I wouldn't, depended on how I felt and how much oomph my legs had left in me. But other times you would see the ropes where you knew there were no gates, but you still saw tracks on the other side of those ropes. In other words, there were skiers out there on the mountain among us who disregarded boundaries. To them, there were no rules. There was no mutual respect, if you will. They just crashed it and they went skiing and didn't get caught probably most of the time. Well, to me, whenever I think of out-of-bounds planets, I think of boundaries. Basically, I had my own get crashed a couple of times, and that's when you have to make difficult decisions and you have to enforce what you are willing to accept versus what you are simply not willing to accept. Unfortunately, my mother was where those lessons mostly came from, and I had to set boundaries for years there too. So we have that element with this full moon. Not only has it shown up in my own life, I've heard a lot of you saying the same thing, and here it is in red, green, black, white, and blue in the chart. It's right there. 3 other aspects along with this full moon. 2 have already happened this morning. One is that Mercury squared Chiron. That happened at 12:07 this morning Eastern Time. Then Venus came along and was in a trine aspect with Saturn. Let me go ahead and mention the one tonight, then we'll tie all this together. The one this evening is at 8:15 p.m., where Mercury sextiles Uranus. So remember, and typically we don't talk about the houses in here because most of what we discuss happens all across the world, and this does too, so this won't be in the same houses for some of you as it is for me, but as I'm looking at this, it has spiritual overtones, for sure. So at this time, in my chart again, Scorpio is the rising sign, just by a degree, so this is all about depth and intensity. Cancer, the moon itself, ruling the 9th house, where the sun is. So not only do we have the element of the sun reflecting spirituality, but it's an essence of this full moon of our entire soul. Then the moon in the 3rd house, which itself, the 3rd house, is ruled by Mercury, but in this chart, Capricorn is sitting on the cusp of the 3rd, so we have to deal with structures and institutions and the conflict of self-independence that the moon will reach in Aquarius on Thursday versus the old, corrupt structures that are worn out and need to be replaced. And this brings me to the other element of this that does not appear so much on today's chart, but is in these 3 aspects upcoming regarding Neptune that we talked about yesterday, the first of which happens tomorrow morning, Venus squaring Neptune, then the 2 on Sunday where we have Mercury and the Sun both trining Neptune. So as we're talking today about that moon sitting right next to Pluto, then we think about how do these old structures preserve their territory? They preserve it by lies and deceptions.
I want the truth! You can't handle handle the truth.
And from that famous movie, A Few Good Men, all the way back in 1992, a scene of an institutional commander, Pluto in Capricorn, so mired in his own pride and deception that the truth had to be shocked out of him, lying the whole way through and allowing other people to go down for his lies. Sound familiar? That also is what we have to watch this full moon. Lies and deceptions, illusions, delusions, things that seem normal but are not normal, not only in the collective but also in the individual, requiring you to put up boundaries of what you are going to accept versus not accept. Neptune, also intuition, and those aspects on Sunday are trines, meaning that if you lean into your spiritual path, if you lean into that voice that we talked about 2 episodes back in the Subconscious Mind Mastery podcast, if you haven't heard that, I would really encourage you to catch up on 296, 297, 298, 299, and 300. Those are some of the best podcasts I've released in nearly 10 years. But it's all about listening to that internal voice and hearing it. And then when we hear it, often come the other voices, just like was in that audio, that want to have a piece of our life. And that's where we have to erect the boundaries. And this full moon is just only going to amplify all of that. It already has. I mean, it is. And yes, the work will be done. It's been being done over the last few days. It will continue, but then it will really ramp up into the truth and the seeking of the truth and the reconnecting with our source. Oh, you guys, this is so the message. We have to reconnect with higher source. We have to find God again. That is the solution. And may you look up at the moon tonight and see God up in the sky. See you back tomorrow. Enjoy the full moon. Have a great day.